Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Barbara, would you please call the roll?
Okay, we have Commissioner Sales, Moss, Noonan, and Parfrey present.
These proceedings will be broadcast, as always, on Channel 35. Can't tell you the exact time, but they will be broadcast. Let's start with the report of our General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. First thing I would like to do this morning is I would like to have us present to the American Cancer Society a check for almost $109,000 that came from our employees as part of our daffodils program, which is why we have these beautiful yellow daffodils here on our dais here today. Because the employees of DWP really raised the bar. We had last year we had combined put together $84,000 as our contribution. We had a target of $100,000 this year and went way past that to $108,500 and some change in that amount. At a time when our economy is doing poorly, to have our people dig that deep, it's almost a 30% increase over what we did last year. We're very proud of that. I'm very proud of our staff for making that contribution. We had Gail Harris and a number of our coordinators who spent a lot of time cajoling and nudging, and apparently it didn't take as much cajoling and nudging as we might thought, because people were pretty generous with that. So we'd like to bring up our representative with American Cancer Society today and to present that check to them.
We like big checks. So we got a nice signature.
Scoot over just a little bit this way. Yeah. A little bit more. Right there, okay. Bring that one up. Very good. Very good. Very nice. Okay. All right. Okay, here's the first one. You come out right here. Good again. Very good. Again. Okay, go again. Well, that one. Very nice. Big smile. Very good. Thank you.
Congratulations. Appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Great cause. Thank you much.
Don't spend it all.
Thank you, sir.
It's hard to get that one into the ATM.
Yeah, I'm going to try something like that.
Mr. President, I'd also like to point another item of a very important milestone that we made today on the Adelanto Solar Project. You might be aware that we have, between our Adelanto project and another project up by Pine Tree, we have cumulatively about 20 megawatts of solar that LADWP is installing for direct connection into our transmission system as part of that effort. And it's been moving along very quickly. Today, this morning, we installed the very last support post. And for those of you who aren't familiar with, you've seen, I think, some of our prior discussions and presentations on those projects, and they are there's a lot of steel in the ground to support each of these solar arrays. And there are 9,598 posts in the ground, and post number 9,598 has now been installed. It was a major milestone to get that done. It's ahead of schedule. We're doing about 1,500 posts a week, and I know this sounds kind of, like, well, what's the big deal about posts? But it's the big. Once you have that done, the rest of it comes along pretty quickly. We are anticipating to be commercially operable before the end of June of this year, which would be on schedule and so far under budget on that. So it's a big step forward. It is our biggest solar array to date on here. It'll give us, I think, good experience of what it takes to get these size arrays in the ground, and I'm very pleased with the progress that we've made with the power system on that. Just want to report that to you.
Great.
And with that, that's the end of my report.
Conclude your report. I think we do have one speaker card on item number 2.
Yes, the speaker, oh, nothing? Okay, he says he does not wish to speak on 2 after all. Okay.
Item 3, comments from commissioners. Commissioner Noonan?
I do. As a follow-up to Commissioner Parfrey's comment about the lack of our video conferencing abilities, I'd like to request that the department provide an update on the boardroom integration project. I recall that there was an RFP that was supposed to go out about last year. However, I do not recall it appearing before the board. And I realize that the City of LA, the County of LA, the Harbor all have more updated technology, which really allows for a more transparent, collaborative communication process. And I think that, especially for our ratepayers who are located in further distances like the Owens Valley, we should realize a collaborative mode of communication which extends compassion to those unable to travel the distance, whether for fiscal or pragmatic reasons, to our board meetings.
We will do so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Parfrey?
No, thank you.
Anything else on item 3? Public comment. We have 2 speaker cards.
I have 3 now.
3 now. Okay.
The first speaker is Joe Safier, I believe. Sorry if I mispronounced that.
Welcome.
You got it almost right. It's Joe Safier. Good afternoon, President Sales, members of the Commission, and staff. I'm addressing you as a private citizen. However, this time last year, I spent a year as the foreperson of the Los Angeles Civil Grand Jury, which is an investigative body in the county with jurisdiction over any governmental entity within the county. I can talk more about it if you're interested when I'm finished with my prepared remarks. I'm here to talk about the report that we issued June 30th of last year. As some of you know, there's a 90-day requirement for any agency to whom findings and recommendations are addressed. There's a 90-day requirement to respond to the presiding judge of the Superior Court and to the grand jury. We had 2 reports which were addressed to the DWP. I looked recently at the responses posted on the Civil Grand Jury website. The reports and all responses are public documents. I was sort of stunned when I noted that the DWP was the only agency over probably 40 agencies whose response was missing. There were, however, some letters posted, one dated September 27th from President Sales requesting an additional 30 days to respond to the report, and then a follow-up letter November 17th from General Counsel Brown requesting that the court defer consideration or provide time to defer consideration by the DWP until their January meeting. I've looked at the January agendas, the February agendas, and this agenda, and note no public consideration of the board's response to the Civil Grand Jury report. And I really have just a couple of questions for you. The first is, has the report in fact been approved and I just missed it? If so, where can I get a copy? If not, when should it be expected? As I say, you're now almost 270 days beyond a 90-day deadline. And lastly, why has it taken this long? As I say, every other agency that responds to the grand jury report, and this has happened in past years, generally within 90 days, maybe a few days thereafter, every agency's response is in. So with that, I just have a couple of questions for you, and I'll answer any questions that you may have.
We don't have any questions.
Very good.
I'll respond.
Please.
I'll take responsibility. It's been my schedule. It was on the board's agenda once before, but I wasn't here. We will move on this quickly.
Is there a date when I should expect to come back and see?
We will move on this quickly.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, the second speaker is Dr. Tom Williams.
Good afternoon. Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, El Sereno. You can see it out the window. Nice place here. 2 things. One, from our neighborhood council, we thank you very much for all of the paint that you've provided to us for painting our fire hydrants. We do have a generally agreed comment that the paint sucks. You need to get a better source of the paint. Because we've painted, I think there's maybe 2 left up in University Hills. But over 500 fire hydrants have been painted. But within 6 months, the yellow faded. I might say somewhat like the daffodils. We had some earlier paint that we had purchased, and it seemed to work better. Maybe you should consider a change of color. LA County color seems to last a lot longer. Then I have my usual things. I say he's asking about your responses. How about a strategic plan, and how about an organization chart? Maybe nobody knows who's going to be responsible for submitting comments to the civil grand jury. I don't know. So we would like to find out, is there an organization chart? If not, when is it going to be prepared? Is there a strategic plan for the corporation, not for this part or this part? When is it going to be prepared? Thank you.
Next comment?
Next speaker is Linda Romney.
Good afternoon. Again, I would like to address the fact that this 30% rate increase for the water, which is the largest rate increase in the recorded history for the Department of Water and Power. When I was before you at the last session, the general manager of the Department of Water and Power, Mr. Nichols, stated that it was because we did not have sufficient water this year. However, we already had an increase in March. Then you okayed at the last meeting another rate increase for notice to be going out for June. The fact of the matter is that if you have to have that notice out, as you stated last time, within 50 days, that means that that notice went out before we even had what we normally have is our rainy season in February. So obviously it is not because of the fact that we have not had sufficient water this year. The fact of the matter is that, as you discussed last year, it is because you're converting over the reservoirs to drinking water standard. We do not drink that water. We use it for bathing, we use it for washing our dishes, for washing our clothes, and for irrigation. We do not need the quality for drinking water. The majority of the people buy water, bottled water, or they have filters. I do not understand why we have to have this huge rate increase. Furthermore, all of the deductions for your senior citizens and your indigent have been zero as of July of last year because sanitation raised their rate to $50 per billing period. You annihilated and completely got rid of the increase that we used to enjoy for indigent and senior citizens. Then you've equaled that to what it is for life support equipment, so that's zero also. Now, HEAP, which is the only place you can go for a discount, has lowered their amount that they will pay per year to $218. So what's going to happen? Genocide of your indigent and your senior citizens. Please, this has to stop. We cannot be deprived of water and electric. And you've had these rate increases, one after another, and yet the senior and the indigent discount remains the same for the last 25 years. $10 for water and $34 for electric.
Wrap up your remarks, please.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the last card for item 4.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Barbara?
Pardon?
Any other public comment?
Not for 4, no.
Let's turn to item 5. I'm going to approve the minutes separately. Let's start with January 3rd. Is there a motion to approve those?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? January 25th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I need to abstain.
Motion passes. February 7th. Is there a motion?
Yes, there is.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any abstentions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Do any of the commissioners want to pull any of the items on the consent agenda? That's items 6 through 12.
I would like to pull 10 and 11 because they're connected.
And there a motion to approve items 6, 7, 8, 9, and 12?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, motion passes. Let's go to item 10. Who's presenting item 10, Ron? Is that Mr. Brown? Or? Okay. Commissioner Nooney, you can just start with your questions.
Okay, great. Well, I
We can
thought-
take 10 and 11 together, is that?
That's perfect. And I actually thought that the order was kind of interesting in that 10 requests approval to move forward with this law firm, but doesn't raise the issue of conflict. And then the next tab raises the conflict. So I wanted to bring them up together because I think it'd be, I don't know how we would have addressed that if we'd approved hiring this firm and then later on disagreed on hiring or agreeing to the conflict waiver. But I guess I have several questions. First of all, under item 10, it states that the contract is outlined to start on March 1st, 2012, and as you know, we're past that. So I don't know if that was just an error in writing or...
It was not an error. It was done intentionally. We had some potential pending litigation that we wanted to be prepared for. That litigation has not come to fruition, so we weren't forced to deal with it in that situation, but it was done intentionally.
And I only raise that point just because this board on so many occasions has asked that prior to asking us to approve a contract that there be some advanced timeline and notice.
It was purely due to exigent circumstances, which fortunately did not arise. It is not common practice.
Okay. I understand that the RFP was sent out to 400 law firms. Only 18 responded. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that because of an area of specialty, or why would you think that so few firms responded? And why would we select a law firm that has conflicts and that they're opposite to us on already existing litigation?
Well, let me take that in parts. CEQA is very, very unique area of the law. Those firms that practice very sophisticated CEQA cases, they're few and far between. So I think that's really why you only saw 18 firms. It's very expensive to respond to RFPs. We require a lot of information. And if you're not uniquely qualified in this area, I don't think it would probably be in the best interest of the law firm to respond to an RFP that's not really answering our needs. So as to why a firm that may be in conflict, there's no litigation with this firm that's pending before the city. There is no anticipated. It is by law, when you go through the conflicts, that you call it a direct conflict, but in fact there is no litigation pending. It is primarily the, I'm treading lightly because of what it is and what we may go into, but it is primarily, there are two areas of conflict that we discussed. One is down at the port. It is not CEQA work at all. There is no litigation pending. There are different lawyers for each of the different actions. There is a wall set up with that firm, so we will never use the same lawyers. The other conflict, we have done significant research, and there really is no pending conflict. It was just something that had to be brought to your attention so that you could make a knowing decision whether or not to accept this contract.
Because I read the form that they provided us differently. I read that they would like us to sign a waiver because they're simultaneously representing issues of the city that could address that should address potential conflicts. That one of their largest clients poses potential adversity between us and that entity. They're very explicit about theoretical adverse consequences to the department, and even though they talk about what kind of ethical fence they would use to try and minimize that potential those potential issues. Even their wording is, it's not a guarantee. They say, given this, it's unlikely that the attorneys in our firm would learn confidences and secrets that would be significant to either parties.
Right. It is not uncommon for firms to have conflicts, particularly with the city of Los Angeles, which is so large. And we are required, lawyers are required to delineate what those conflicts may be. And if you see at the very bottom, if there is becomes a real conflict, they will request to either leave our employment or leave the other, and we will never, and that would be the situation. We will track this all the way through, but at the moment, it doesn't appear that that potential conflicts will ever become significant, and they are, again, uniquely qualified for us and our representation that we need.
Okay. And I would argue that obviously they don't think it's that unlikely, or else they wouldn't request that we sign this waiver.
It actually is something that we need to disclose so that you can make a knowing waiver. This should be more common than not.
Well, let me ask you this. Of the firms that did respond, was there a section in the RFP that asked the firms to outline conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest?
I don't remember the RFP right offhand. I believe we do ask for conflicts. We do, right?
Well,
Yes,
it wouldn't matter because the state bar code would require it anyways. If I might step in, as a practicing attorney, I've written similar letters like this because from time to time you do see conflicts that potentially could occur because clients have interacting relations over time, and the important thing in what the state bar requires of practicing attorneys is that they advise clients of potential conflicts and actual conflicts. And the gold standard is, will it affect the representation? And to create a wall to protect, to cordon off certain attorneys who might be potentially adverse is not an uncommon thing, especially in larger firms. So my reading of it, I felt it was pretty standard, and I was happy to see the extent to which they describe the conflicts and really describe them, because sometimes you just get glancing references to them and don't really understand the nature and purpose of the conflict. Here I thought it was a very well thought out explanation, and I was satisfied that we won't have any problems here.
Okay, well, not having a background in law, I saw it as a less than ideal scenario, and I just wanted to understand if other firms competing had similar conflicts, but given your background, and I heard President Sales kind of backing you up, I defer to both of you in moving forward with this item.
Other questions or comments? And if the conflict does arise, we will deal with it at that point, and we will have the option of changing representation?
Oh, certainly, yes.
Okay. Is there a motion on items 10 and 11?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, items 10 and 11 pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 13, Marty?
Item 13 is a request for an amendment to an agreement with Air Sciences, who's doing our scientific work at Owens Lake. Bill Van Wagner and Nelson Mejia from the Owens Lake group are here to present this issue, this item.
Good afternoon. I'm William Van Wagner with Water Operations Owens Lake. This contract with Air Sciences is for special scientific services, which we need to work out on Owens Lake on our regulatory issues, and includes things such as air modeling, agronomy, soil sciences, and things of that nature. We're asking to add $3 million to the contract for until the end of the contract. And that's because starting in about August of last year, we realized that we were starting to track high on expenses. And it was mainly due to really 3 areas that were required a level of effort significantly more than what had been anticipated. One is the master plan activity. We hadn't anticipated on doing the Owens Lake master plan when we first entered into this agreement. And to date, that's run us about $500,000, and it's continuing to require additional effort. Another is the tillage Backham test. While it was originally scoped in the original agreement, the level of effort required for that has greatly exceeded what was anticipated. And in fact, your board issued a resolution to Great Basin expressing concerns about that very test. And to date, we're still working on coming up with a criteria for the analytical methods that are going to be acceptable for doing the analysis and determining if it was successful or not. And finally, the Phase 9 order that we received last year, that was unanticipated, and it's been quite an effort to respond to that, and essentially providing legal support to our legal counsel in that. And also, we expected that there's very likely going to be another order for essentially Phase 10, and reviewing Great Basin's board package today for their next meeting, the APCO has in fact said that by sometime this spring, we'll be seeing another order. So we'll be dealing with a Phase 9 and a Phase 10 project. Hence the need to have additional funds added to the contract. There's a figure on page 2, which is a graph that we prepared that shows basically how we were on track until these extraordinary events occurred, and then how the costs are diverging.
I'd like to add that Air Sciences has done an excellent job at meeting their commitments as far as MIBI-WIBI participation is concerned. Like, for example, under minority-owned businesses, they committed to provide an 11% participation. So far, we've done 981%, and they're on target to meet their goals. On the additional funding, they've committed to maintain the same levels of participation. On women-owned businesses, they committed to do 4.92%. They've accomplished 6.45%. They've exceeded that. And again, they're going to continue that level of participation. And actually, you know, Air Sciences is subcontracting about 45% of their work on other businesses too. So we thought that was worth mentioning.
Anything else you want to say before we open up for questions?
There's one thing I could add. Just this was a competitively bid contract, and for the first 14 months we've been on schedule. We are working on the next competitively bid contract, but the level of work that we have to do now to meet our legal obligations and continue with trying to challenge what we think are erroneous orders, it's important that we keep them engaged fully up to the time that we can get a new RFP on the street. So this will cover us until that time. We're working on the new RFP at the same time.
Marty, could you, for the benefit of our commissioners, give a rough order of magnitude of what, of just what order Phase 9 alone scope might be in terms of dollars?
Phase 9 was, oh gosh, every day I ask the bill, it keeps growing. Phase 9 was about 3 square miles. Phase 10 is another 2 miles, about 5 miles. Our current price tag is over $200 million for those miles.
Well, we're still trying to sort out what the Phase 10 would really look like, but based on the 30% design that went along with the Phase 9, if we are not going to use more water and if gravel is not going to be allowed by the State Lands Commission, we're looking at north of $400 million.
This is for Phase 9? Or Phase
9 and 10.
9 and 10, although 10 I think is growing a little bit
10's
with
probably
this.
$200 million. 9 is part of it.
Yeah, it's very likely that the Phase 10 order will be more than just the watch areas that were in, you know, part of the Phase 9 order where we were required to do a 30% design.
So it's very clear that it's important to bring good science to the table so that we really understand what's at stake. And so I feel very strongly that the additional funds for Air Sciences is warranted.
Well, my reaction is this is a lot of money to be putting into a contract, especially, at this midpoint in time. Unfortunately, I just don't see any reason why we aren't obligated to do it at this point. I mean, that's the frustration I'm having, and I'm hearing about this Phase 10 thing is really, makes me want to rail about all the costs that we're dumping into Owens Lake. It's really getting, and has been, but is continuing to get way out of control. We have to do something.
In response to that, I mean, I totally agree. For 14 months, we ran this right on track, and then we saw the new orders come in, the new efforts go, and as we saw the divergence. So, in December, we looked back and said over the summer months, we're getting off track. And so looking at what's coming up, we need a new RFP to be competitive. But we've been told by the regulator that we don't need our own scientists. Trust them, it'll be fine. We know that is completely not the case. If we don't have good science, we believe we have the top scientists working for us. But it's good science that is bolstering the legal arguments as to what our obligations ought to be. So at this point, if we can't keep them on board, then we'll be at a real loss. And what's at risk is huge, as Ron has pointed out.
General Manager Nichols, just for the record, how much have we spent on Owens Lake to date since the settlement?
We spent approximately $1 billion to date on this project, this effort. And I'd like to make a clear point on this, because this sometimes gets mischaracterized by outside parties, that the department is in no way shirking its obligations to do what it's responsible for up at Owens Lake. We have done an incredible amount of work. Even the board of the Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District, in a recent meeting when we made a presentation to them about some of our concerns about the ambiguity of what our obligations are as interpreted by their executive director, acknowledged that we are 90+% reduction in particulate emissions from Owens Lake from all the efforts that we have done. And anyone who has been to Owens Lake and has been out on the lake to see what we've done, it is the largest dust mitigation project certainly in North America, and I don't know but what it might be probably in the world. We are trying to get our arms around getting regulatory certainty over that for which we're responsible. And this issue of the science, the facts, the basis that establishes where are the limits of those responsibilities and how are the best ways to get these things done play extraordinarily into what those future obligations are going to be. And we have undertaken legal action because of the ambiguities, because of actions that we think are inappropriately undertaken by the regulator on this, and we're doing so in the best interest of our customers who have to pay our rates for all these extraordinary costs.
Now, I just want to clarify one thing. If taking what you said at face value, that we're 90% of the way there, and taking what you're saying, that it could be another $400 million to do phases 9 and 10, you're looking at a 40% additional cost to the DWP and to the ratepayers of Los Angeles to get to that last 10%.
And that
maybe.
And your point of maybe is our greatest concern, because to date, by virtue of the fact that this phase 10 just came out in discussions recently, gives us great concern that are we going to get to phase 20? Our concerns are just that this issue has to get some closure on it, and each time they come back to us on something, it's a more difficult undertaking. Our limits, they're putting more and more limits on the different types of measures that we can utilize, and this is why we believe we need to get good, solid information, know that we're standing on good principle and ground, and deal with something that is, many, many orders of magnitude more than the cost that we're putting in to try to get that good science.
Yeah, we're committed to about 45 square miles now. There's about 80 square miles of playa on that lake bed.
And in terms of comparison, the amount of this contract change equals about 2 weeks of our 6-month gravel project in Phase 8.
That's a lot of rocks.
It is.
Other questions, other comments?
I'd like to move to approve.
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, item passes. I think we have a speaker card for item 14.
Yes. The speaker for item 14 is Dr. Tom Waits.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, follow the money, the man said. Same way for the item 14. How much did we save by being able to get a 24-month extension, somewhat like the once-through power plant extensions of regulatory compliance? But here, you've already pointed out as to how much it's going to cost you. You don't know beforehand? That's a real problem. How much does it save us by delaying 24 months for this particular issue? Sounds like money in the bank. Same way with once-through cooling on power plants. How much did that save us to get an exemption or an extension? Thank you.
Okay, that was the last card for item number 14.
Item 14 up, who's presented? Is that you again, Marty?
Yes, this is,
Let me just ask, any of the commissioners have questions on this one?
No, actually, I don't. I'd like
No, I'm ready to move
Is
for
there,
approval.
is there a motion?
move to approve.
Second.
Any objection? Hearing none, item 14 passes. Item 15.
Item 15 is a new agreement with AGMA Consulting Corporation. Essentially what this is, we did AGMA is the consulting, is the firm that actually has the software, creates the software that powers the ERSP purchasing system. Our original contract for implementation of that system, AGMA was a subcontractor. When we completed that, we agreed with the prime contractor that for ongoing maintenance and any future enhancement, it made most sense for the contract to be directly with AGMA. We issued a purchase order, a GM contract, for just keeping maintenance going on the software when the original contract, which had included maintenance, expired, as we negotiated a contract with AGMA for the broader level of services. So this contract is software maintenance and support and some buckets of money for certain enhancements going forward. The three major enhancement areas that we need to work on are the adaptation of the system to reflect the local bid preference that was approved, the adaptation of the system to move from the GFE support that we have in the system today to the city's small business enterprise system that needs to be in place in July. And then the integration with the Maximo project as we move inventory into Maximo from our very ancient mainframe inventory system. We need to be able to connect. To do receiving in Maximo, we need to have an integration between ERSP and the receiving system. So ERSP is where you issue the purchase orders. As you receive into Maximo, you need to be able to verify that what you're receiving matches the purchase order, and then provide both sides of that equation to the payable system so they can verify invoices against both the purchase order and the receiving records. So there's a piece of work to do that integration, the work that has to be done in ERSP to work with the migration of receiving and inventory to Maximo. So this contract covers those activities and all the software maintenance and support for a 3-year period. So that's...
Mr. Sam, anything you want to add?
No.
Mr. Moss?
I have a question. The UGMA software that we have for the ERSP system, do we own that, or are we licensing that from UGMA?
We license it. We own a perpetual. We have a perpetual license. So even if we were to say we don't want any more support, we can continue to run it without any additional expense. We generally want to keep those things on maintenance for as they do enhancements, as they do things for other customers, we get access to those, and for sort of advanced support if there are issues that come up that we need some additional support and consultation on.
Okay. And is the software flexible enough to allow in-house DWP staff to be able to make changes like putting in the LA bid preference that you're going to be using AGMA for? I mean, in the future, when we make changes like that, will we be able to do it with our staff, or are we always going to have to run back to the manufacturer?
To a large degree, that level of change we're going to need to have them do, because that really is a program modification. There is a lot of configuration that we can do inside the system, so a lot of work related to changing limits and who needs to authorize what kind of purchase. All those things we can do, all those configuration changes we can do inside the program and actually don't require programming in and of themselves. So this system's very configurable, but some things at this level really require work in the base level of the software.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Item 15, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, item 15 is approved. Item 16, any questions on the informational board letter?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner Moss. Yes, I noticed that our discounts are at 72% currently, and in past financial reports, they were over 90%. So could you tell me why there's this discrepancy at this time?
So we did have some challenges in January getting invoices into the accounts payable function on time. So we have to have a regular dialogue with the units within the utility that receive the invoices to make sure that they're pushed through the system and paid as quickly as possible. So we did identify the areas that were not being as timely in getting those invoices through the system, met with them, and believe we've worked out the delays with regard to that vendor. So it is an ongoing challenge to ensure everyone recognizes our goal and plays their part in getting these processed. But with regard to the particular invoices that caused this drop below our target in January, we think we've got those issues resolved.
So in future letters, you anticipate to see a higher return?
We expect to be back above our target of 90%.
And I also noticed that our ECAF at the end of January is at $167.4 million in under collections. Do we anticipate where we might be in coming months?
We do have our financial projection that indicates the ECAF under collection will be on a downtrend in the next several years. It does fluctuate within a year. The under collection will head down in the coming months, and over the next several years will drop, we forecast, roughly 10 to 20 million a year. So we're on a path to get it down, but it's going to remain a sizable number for some time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moss?
Commissioner Parfrey covered my issues. Thank you.
Any other questions? This team filed. We have a speaker for item 17.
Yes.
Well, you may have the, are you the speaker? Yeah. Okay. All right, let's make the presentation then.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Selma Collins, Acting Director of Supply Chain Services. The presentation that I have here today is to cover two specific items. The first one is to give you an update on the status of the Local Business Preference Program, and also the second part of the presentation is to talk about the Good Faith Effort Program and how it's applied to material contracts. The Local Business Preference Program was approved by this board on November 1st of 2011, and there was an implementation date of January 2012. In preparation for the implementation in January, there are several steps that were taken to ensure that as many vendors as possible were aware about this new policy. So one of the things that was done is the City of LA through their business assistance virtual network. That's basically their system to advertise contracts to the vendor community. They did an email blast to over 36,000 vendors that they have in their database. We did something similar with our own system, which is called ERSP, and that's approximately 5,000 vendors that were notified through that system. In addition to that, what we also did is work with some of the advocacy groups that the department has relationships with, provided them with the information, and they were able to post this for their membership as well. Staff also worked with the Economic Development Group to reach out to some of the business partners from the Chamber of Commerce, also worked with our communications department to put the information on an electronic newsletter that is sent to our premier customers. And lastly, it was also put on the ladwp.com website. So with all that, we felt that we were doing as much as possible to get the word out to the vendors that the Department of Water and Power had a new program, and that presented opportunities for local vendors to be even more competitive on water and power contracts. So some of the things that we did, we worked with the City Attorney's Office in developing a new language, which is part of the template that we use for all our professional service RFPs and also for our specifications. On January 4th, we implemented the program, and from that point forward, we've been using the system. To date, there's approximately 300 vendors that are registered as local vendors, and they register through the city. The agency responsible for registering is the Bureau of Contract Administration. And in conversations with them recently, they told us that right now it's around 300 vendors that are registered as local vendors. We have also included the local preference in 23 of the 26 contracts that we have reviewed since January when we implemented this. Yes, sir.
Thank you for stopping, Mr. Collins. I just want to ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
And it's in relation to the definition of a local vendor.
Yes.
And so, for example, there's some very large corporations that have offices that are located within the city of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
So Lockheed Martin, are they a local vendor?
Well, there are some requirements that they need to meet, and I guess it's on a case-by-case basis. What I can tell you, the three main requirements to be considered a local vendor: one, you have to occupy workspace in the county of Los Angeles. You must also be in compliance with all licensing and taxes in the city of Los Angeles. And then one of the following: either 50% of your staff must be working 60% of the time within the LA County. If you're a smaller company, it has to be 50 employees working 60% of the time within LA County. Or they can be headquartered.
Working within the county.
I'm sorry, repeat.
50% of those employees working within the county have to work 60% of the time.
Yes.
Because it's not their worldwide employee base or
No.
nationwide.
No.
So it's on an office-by-office basis.
Pretty much, yes, sir. So they do have a presence here, or they can also be headquartered here in Los Angeles, or in the county of Los Angeles. So those are the requirements that need to be met. So it is on a case-by-case basis. So what they would have to do is turn in a certification request to BCA, Bureau of Contract Administration, and they would do the evaluation.
So it's the Bureau that's the certifying authority.
Actually, they're responsible for it. The way in which it's being done at this point is an affidavit. So when a company wants to register, they provide an affidavit that basically says that they meet the requirements. That information is provided to the Bureau of Contract Administration, and it is up to BCA to check to ensure that what's being displayed in the affidavit is correct.
So they self-certify, basically?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's a pretty high bar, and so I would think that if you're a global corporation and you happen to have an LA office, you would not qualify from the way you've just defined.
Perhaps, yes, sir.
All right.
I would like you to expand on the first requirement about the entity occupying office space in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Are there certain parameters? Because I have heard of companies who compete on RFPs, and even though they don't have an LA base, they may open up a satellite office with one person and an address. So, I mean, are there any kind of boundaries, parameters?
Well, there are parameters. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I think if somebody was to open an office and have one person, they wouldn't meet some of the other requirements as far as the number of employees that need to be working within the county for a certain percentage of the time. So that will be the issue there.
So and I'm sorry, just to clarify, so the way that it's stated is, at the time of responding to the RFP, you need to have X number of employees working, or could it be like, when you start doing the work, you will have so many employees? I just want to understand, are we asking for them definitive figures, or figures that can come into place if they're awarded the contract?
Yes, actually, at the time of bid, they need to show that they are compliant. However, there are provisional certifications that can be obtained. For example, if somebody has bidded on a contract that's at least $1 million and they are the apparent low bidder, if they can also prove that they are opening office space within a certain period of time in LA County, they could become qualified. And in that particular case, they will allow them to have the certification as a provisional certification, pursuant that within a certain number of days after the contract is awarded, that they actually are in full compliance with it. So there is a little bit of gray area for somebody who's setting up shop, basically, in the county of Los Angeles. Okay, very good. So continuing, so one of the things that we've had to do, and you heard about the work we do in ERSP, is ERSP is our electronic procurement system. And what we're doing, or what we have just done, and actually we rolled this out on Saturday, we added functionality to the system that would allow us to, when we receive the bids electronically, also automatically calculate the preference based on their certification status. So that was something that was just recently done, and it'll make the evaluation of the bids a lot faster. So that was just completed recently. We're also working on having an interface with the City of Los Angeles Vavon system, because there's a lot of information that is being provided that we're trying to avoid the double entry. So we're trying to have a way of interfacing it in the background so that we're able to get that information. That's part of what we're working on right now.
So refresh my recollection.
Yes.
What is the preference?
The preference, if you are a local meaning within the county, you get an 8% preference. So if it's a bid, you would get an 8% reduction in your bid only for bid comparison purposes. If it's an RFP, what you would do is get an 8% increase in your score. And then that will determine actually who's considered to be the lowest bidder, or in the case of an RFP, who's a successful proposer. As a matter of fact, I believe at the next board meeting, you will have a contract in front of you for your consideration where the local business preference made a difference in who got the award of the contract. And that's the first one. So I think you'll see that the next board meeting in April. Okay, the next part of the presentation that I wanted to touch on has to do with the Good Faith Effort Program and how we apply it to material contracts. I know that's been a source of a lot of concern, and we wanted to hopefully provide a little more information, as well as some of the concerns that staff has as well about this program, and the fact that by July of this year, we're going to be moving away from the GFE and moving into the Small Business Enterprise Program. And it's a very big difference. One is the effort that we grade. With the Small Business Program, we're actually looking for actual participation of small business, not just the effort. So it's a very big difference in, I think, in the results.
Are the two mutually exclusive?
Not really, but I think the GFE program is targeting minority-owned business, women-owned business, OBEs, or other business enterprises. The Small Business Enterprise is targeting small business. There's a subset to that, which is called an emerging business enterprise, and it's based on how many dollars they make on the average for the last couple of years. And there's also the disabled veteran business enterprise. So these are new categories that have been introduced, and expanding the outreach that we're doing. Okay, so you probably heard many times we talk about bidders passing or not passing the GFE. And basically what we have is the department has 10 evaluation criteria points, and up on the screen, I think we have 8 of them, not all 10. And these are the things that the bidders are required to do in order to show that they've done a good faith effort. There is a point system where each one of these categories is allocated a certain weight. The total possible points is 100 points. In order to be deemed to have passed the good faith effort, you must attain 75 points. And there is no partial credit. So if in one particular area you don't do a good enough job, you're getting 0 points. So This criteria and the weight that it has was actually passed by the Board of Water and Power Commissioners back in 2009. And the reason why is because we made a change in the weight. We were finding that there were companies that were passing the GFE, but did not seem to be making a good enough effort. So there's a category that says negotiating good faith, which is the second to last on this list. That one, the point system, actually the points actually got increased to 26. So if you fail that single area, which is the most important one, you will fail the good faith effort because you'll get 74 points.
And how do we measure that?
The way in which we measure it is when bids are due, we require the vendors to provide us with proof that they have actually done all these things. So for example, we ask them to show us copies of the emails or the communication with any interested subs. They're supposed to also reach out to advocacy groups. We want to see the communication. If we're talking about negotiating in good faith, for example, specifically, let's say we had a number of subs that provided a quote to the prime. We want to understand what was the cost comparison between one sub and the other. If they did not pick the sub that had the lowest price, why not? What were the exact issues? We want to see all that in writing. That is what they provide to us. Also, there's some clarification involved, so my staff in supply diversity, if they're not quite certain that they've made the real effort, what they can do is call the prime and ask for additional information to just complement what's been submitted already. So everything is verified through the documentation that's submitted at the time of bid.
So
Yes.
if I was a large contractor and I call in a minority contractor and I just sit there, right? And I never change my bid and we just look at each other, right? How do I know that wasn't an exercise of bad faith? How would the department ever know? I mean, I had my meeting, I sat there, I brought them in, right? But I didn't budge on the price, I didn't try to work with them, I made no accommodations whatsoever, I just, no.
Yeah. Well, we would look, first of all, to see if there is a pattern. For example, if it's a large contractor that has done work for the department, and we see that in that one particular area, they receive multiple quotes, but they keep going back to the same guy they always use. Obviously, we want to see what is it about that company that makes them more competitive than some of the other subs. We usually start with pricing. Usually that's the most evident thing. Somebody bids a price that's higher than this other person, but you didn't select them. We want to find out why. If we need to, we will even contact the subs and ask them as well, what happened here? We see that you provided a quote to the ABC company and that you were not selected, and a lot of times they're more than happy to tell us what happened, what transpired during the negotiations with the prime.
So we do have a conversation with
We do have a conversation, yes, sir. We try to go beyond just what's on paper. Even though that's what we first look at, we want to make sure that we do have a conversation with the primes and the subs as well. Next, what we have here is kind of a quick graph to show you a progression of how we apply the GFE. And if you look on the left side, it's supposed to be green. It's a little pale there on the screen. During the development of the spec and the RFP, the contract administrator, who is the person that's putting the spec together, the RFP, is required to identify areas of the contract that, based on their understanding and their expertise, could be subject to subcontracting. They're also required to provide documentation, which is basically called a subcontracting opportunity worksheet, and list in there also what subcontracting areas are available for these type of contracts.
Let me stop you there, because
Yes.
that is an absolute pet peeve. You've heard me say this before.
Yes.
I still believe we should have to exercise GFE on commodity contracts.
Yes.
I do. So what do we have to do to change that?
Well, we are doing that. And
we are doing it.
We are doing the commodities, absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay, so you heard me.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, I heard you and heard the manager too, very loud and
Okay,
clearly.
all right, then we can talk.
And I will talk about that too.
Okay.
I will touch on some of the contracts that we're using GFE for materials.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, sir.
Question for you. On the GFE requirement, if you have a prime contractor who's a minority business enterprise, are they still required
Yes.
to go through the GFE? Now,
They are
why
required.
would that be?
That is the way that this program was set up. And I think part of it too is by providing subcontracting, you're providing opportunity to smaller firms.
Yeah, the theory is to broaden the base, whether or not you do it as a contractor or a subcontractor.
Because I think we had a bid a couple meetings ago where there was went upside down on the GFE because I think the prime was minority business enterprise and they didn't feel that they had to get GFE, and you said no, and as a consequence, they were
Yes, I
disqualified.
recall that, yes.
Yeah, so that's why I'm raising the issue.
Yeah,
because
it's a fair
It
point.
seems to me that if the point of the GFE is to involve minority in business, and women business enterprises, that if you have the prime who's a minority or women-owned enterprise, then they shouldn't then be counted out. It seems that you're almost shooting the messenger.
Yeah. Well, one thing I can tell you is that with the new Small Business Enterprise Program, actually, if you qualify as a small business, you automatically pass that portion.
I see.
So that is a change that's been made from the GFE program to the Small Business Enterprise Program.
Okay.
So I think your concerns were probably the concerns of many others, and that was one of the changes made.
Does this require an actual policy change and a vote by this body?
Well, back in November, when this body approved the Small Business Enterprise, that was part of what was being voted on, sir.
In other words, we've done it.
Yes. Okay.
So then why did we have that contract that came up? Because that predated the policy decision?
Because the implementation of the Small Business Enterprise Program is July of this year.
I see.
So you approved it in November, but staff needed time to work on the changes that we need to make to ERSP and also work with the Information Technology Agency for the city to coordinate the system so we're able to have a more seamless interaction between our system and their system. And that's what we're working on as we speak.
Thank you.
So as we'll say before, so what we have here on the left side is basically what the contract administrator does. Once the contract administrator completes their portion, it's actually submitted to the supplier relations group or supplier diversity group. And the group reviews the information that was provided by the contract administrator. They review all the documentation, but what they also do is we have a database we call JFB Web, where we keep track of all the subcontractors that have been used in different contracts with the department. We look at the areas of work that they can do to ensure that if there is any opportunity out there, my staff tries to identify that. We also take it a step further and do some research on our own, whether it's internet search or talking to other agencies, certification agencies, to ensure that if there's other opportunities, we include it as part of the GFE. So when that evaluation is completed, we make one of two recommendations, either to include GFE as a requirement in the contract or to not include it. And we call it long language, meaning we have the program in there, or short language, meaning there's no requirement, but we do encourage our bidders to still seek subcontracting participation. It's simply not a requirement to do the good faith effort. And normally that's based on whether or not there is realistic, trackable subcontracting opportunities. And I will talk a little more about that in a minute as well. So once we do that, the contract is advertised. Normally when there is GFE on a contract, it's out for 45 days, as opposed to 30 days when there's no GFE. The reason for that is to give the prime contractors a fair opportunity to outreach and to really seek out and put their ads in papers and talk to subs and be able to do a real effort. So usually it's a 45-day turnaround period from the time we issue the bid to the time we open bids and see who's the lowest bidder. Once the bids come in, that's when staff evaluates all the work that's been done by the primes. That's where we see all the proof they show us on the GFE that they've done. If there's any phone calls to be made, whether it's to the prime or the sub, that's when we make them. And based on that, we determine if they pass the GFE using the 10 criteria factors we discussed before, or if they did not pass. If they do not pass, we state that, and usually you go to the next lowest bidder. Normally, we'll evaluate the top three. So if the lowest bidder did not pass, they can automatically go to the second lowest bidder for consideration for award. What you see here is a little bit of history on the GFE and material contracts. I think similar to this current board, back in 2003, the Board of Water and Power Commissioners had concerns about GFE not being included in material contracts. So there was a resolution that was passed that basically required that all board-awarded material contracts shall have GFE. Well, for the next 2 years or so, staff worked on doing this. And what I've listed up here are some of the findings that staff had at that time. And I don't have any exact data to provide you. This is basically information that's been passed down to me. in the last couple of months. But obviously, the first thing, it expanded the number of days that a bid is out from 30 to 45 days. It increased the number of rebids. What we found is that a lot of people were not passing the GFE for materials, so we found ourselves having to put it out to bid again and do it again. And obviously, it became very time-consuming and very difficult to plan the work that you're trying to accomplish. Manufacturers, in some cases, were unwilling to disclose proprietary information, especially when you're buying equipment where there's different components they're getting from different subs. They don't want that broken apart because the reliability of what they're producing and the selling to us is based on those exact parts. Manufacturers also normally bid directly or through a distributor who's not a subcontractor. They claimed also that low markups in their industry made it very difficult to subcontract. And for the manufacturers, many of them had their own transportation company or transportation group, or they had long-standing contracts where they were able to get the best prices.
Now, we've concluded that they can bid out and should bid out transportation work, right?
Whenever possible, yes, sir, yes. But at that time, these are some of the findings and some of the feedback that was received from some of the bidders. So in 2005, in response to this, what the board did is that they issued a new resolution where it required GFE on material contracts when it has been determined that there is a realistic subcontracting opportunity. And that is the resolution that we currently operate under when it comes to when do we apply GFE or not. And I know that the concern was, are we doing this often enough and consistently enough? And I will touch on that in a second. There's three basic types of contracts when it comes to materials. What we call a spot purchase, where it's a one-time purchase. For those type of purchases, the Department of Water and Power commits 100% of the contract. So if we're buying a turbine and it's $200,000, or we're buying two turbines for $200,000, we're committing to the $200,000. However, if we do a price and time, where you're talking about a purchase that's made over a long period of time or a period of time, in that case, normally what you'll see is a one-year contract with 2 optional years. And you'll hear staff also refer to that as 1 + 1 + 1. And that means at the end of the first year, we have the option to renew the contract or not. With those type of contracts, our commitment is 25% of year one only. So if it was a 1 + 1 + 1 contract, $1 million each year, our commitment is only $250,000, which is 25% of year one only. And once again, we have the option to exercise or not exercise the contract if we feel that we have a better option, or there's better pricing, or something has changed, that we're better off going out to the market again. The other type that we have is it's kind of a hybrid contract or hybrid purchase. That's where we are buying materials, but we also need to purchase services associated with the materials. Sometimes it's specialized training or something of that nature that needs to be done, that needs to come with the material. And we can do it either as a spot purchase or as a price and time, depending on the situation. So since 2001, based on a lot of comments that I heard from this board and also from our general manager, we've been making a more concerted effort to include GFE in material contracts. So since May, we have analyzed around 40 material contracts, and these are material contracts that are over $150,000. Of that, 21 of those contracts, we have actually required GFE in these particular contracts. A lot of them are still out there being worked on, and we are finding that there is some participation, maybe not as much as we would like to see it, but there is some subcontracting taking place. One of the things that we have done, and actually one of the things that's mentioned in here, notable exceptions, we talked about that. Transportation tends to be one of those areas that is always a good opportunity for subcontracting. There are some exceptions, however. There are certain materials like transformers that need to be transported with specialty equipment. That is not the average transporter that has. So whenever that's the case, that's an exception that we would make. And that will be, the onus will be on the contract administrator to provide us information and prove that the equipment needed to transport what we're purchasing is specialized in nature. Also, if we are transporting hazardous chemicals, things like chlorine, because the liability the department faces and the vendor that's providing it too, it's very difficult to sub that to the lowest sub out there when they're taking on that liability, which can be quite substantial. So the tendency is for those type of contracts, even though the transportation, to be done by the prime. But if the transportation is kind of like the average type of transportation you see in a semi, those are the kind of things that you will always see that we require GFE for. We also developed kind of a rule of thumb or a guideline because there really wasn't anything on.
Let me ask a question
Yes.
about the exceptions to the transportation rule. I assume there's probably more margin in that kind of work. So if there's more margins, isn't there a better opportunity to subcontract the work?
For transportation, you mean? There is an opportunity for transportation, yes.
I mean, even the specialized transport, because that's where you're, presumably it costs more to transport hazardous materials than does a bucket
Yes.
of nails.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we're paying more, there's a bigger margin, so doesn't that lend itself to a subcontracting opportunity?
My understanding, there's not that many number of transportation companies that meet some of these requirements as far as having the equipment necessary, and also from an insurance perspective. Their cost might be $100,000, $200,000, but if there is a chemical spill, for example, the liability could be in millions and millions of dollars, and I think that may price out some of the other firms that don't have that kind of insurance coverage.
That makes sense to me, but we're predetermining the outcome, right? If we force them through GFE,
Yes.
and it turns out they're not available contractors or they can't meet the contract requirements, that's a basis for not contracting with them. We're
Yes.
predetermining the outcome.
I think that's a judgment call to be made, and I think that the way in which it can be done is you can require the GFE if nobody, because the GFE is the effort that they're making. Really, that's what we're evaluating, not the actual participation, which I know is always an issue. Requiring the effort to be made, if they make it, even if they do not subcontract to somebody else, they can still pass the GFE. And that will be a way to ensure that you're really forcing it and pushing it out there. To see if there's anybody out there that can do the work besides the same old company that always does it. So I know there's some concerns with the operating systems, obviously, but I think it's something we can explore, definitely.
But if I'm a company and I know that I have chlorine, let's say, and I know I ship my own chlorine because I want to protect myself against liability, I may be disinclined to even enter into the bidding process if I know I'm going to have to go through all these hoops for no good reason. You know, if I know that I'm not going to allow it to go to anyone else, and I'm afraid that I'll get dinged because I haven't put forth the effort, because I'm not going to put forth the effort, because I'm not going to allow anyone else to ship it. So I won't even bid. I mean, I guess does that ever happen?
I think, yes, it does happen, and it is a concern, and especially when we talk about chemicals and some of the larger commodities that are more complex and sensitive, we have a very limited number, a pool of vendors to begin with. I know, for example, the chlorine, when it goes into LA Reservoir on the tracks, there's not that many folks that actually produce that anymore. So it does limit competition, or it could limit even further, potentially, if somebody decides they don't want to take the risk.
And that assumes, I think nature abhors a vacuum. If there's a vacuum, other suppliers will step into the void. So I'm not convinced that we shouldn't at least go through the effort of taking a look at GFE. On virtually everything. If it turns out, people aren't bidding, or bidders are dropping out, or we're not getting qualified bidders, then we know the answer.
Yes.
But right now, we've concluded the answer.
Yes.
Without the analysis.
Yes. And once again, we are moving away from GFE, so when I talk about that, you'll see that we're going to be applying the small business enterprise requirements to material contracts as well. We do have some concerns, I'll be quite honest, but we are going to be doing it because I think we need to demonstrate to this board that if there is a problem or concern that is real, and we can actually have you tangible data to show you. But I'll talk about that in a second.
Commissioner Moss, I would assume that the prime contractor probably has a cost advantage over subbing out that same work.
Probably.
That's right, and they can make that argument that it's adding to the cost of the effort rather than reducing it.
Yeah, I mean, they might be self-insured, and otherwise, if they sub it out, they have to buy insurance.
Right.
So one of the criteria that we use is when we're dealing with a spot contract, if the contract, the subcontracting opportunities are equal to or greater than $25,000, we automatically tell our staff, let's put GFE in there. Because one thing we were missing for, I think, since the inception of the program was kind of a dollar threshold. And this is more a rule of thumb that we've developed in the recent past. For price and time materials, where we're talking about, once again, a longer-term contract, what we're requiring is that if it's $100,000 or more over the entire term of the contract, put GFE in there, because it's $100,000 to a small company, that's a lot of money. And we think that we should give them the opportunity to compete. If it's a contract for hybrid for materials and services, if it's $25,000 or more of potential subcontracting, we require GFE, provided that you don't have to have the original equipment manufacturer provide a service. There are certain services that it has to be what we call OEM. If that's not the case and a third party can do it, the GFE is required in those. So we are making an effort. I think we increased substantially the number of contracts, or percentage-wise. We'll do as much as we can to increase that even further to satisfy the board and show that we are doing due diligence. But like I mentioned a couple of times, we are moving away from this. In July of this year, we are required to implement the Small Business Enterprise Program. And like I said before, the biggest difference is with the GFE is the effort. With a small business is a mandatory goal. The mandatory goal that we have set for the department is 25% overall. And this is similar to some of the other departments as well. Now, the challenge that we're going to have is that if we set too high of a goal for materials, we may never get it. So it isn't a case-by-case basis that we're going to evaluate every contract, not just materials, every contract. Normally, construction is a lot easier to attain 25% than is in materials. So we may choose, based on evaluation, to actually have a lower goal for materials. Unfortunately, when we look at our overall aggregate goal, it might dilute the 25% a little bit. But I think that what we're trying to demonstrate is that we're going to apply it there and see what kind of results we get. I do want to mention, however, that interestingly enough, the small business program that we have is tailored from a program that Port of LA has and some other agencies have, and they're listed up on the screen. And none of these programs actually use the SBE on material contracts. They only use it for construction and professional services. So we're really taking it one step further. And what we'd like to do, if it pleases the board, is we're going to implement it this way, see what kind of results we get, and if we have any kind of adverse impacts, bring it back to the board with the information and the data so that we can reconsider it at the appropriate time.
I think that's perfect.
So, question,
Yes.
when we're figuring out the 25%, is that based upon number of contracts let or dollar volume over, say, an annual period?
25, it would be 25% of the contracts that are let.
Okay, so the actual number of contracts.
So it'd be the dollar value,
No, it's the
sorry,
dollar
not the
value.
number of
It would be
contracts,
the
the dollar
dollar
value.
value.
Yes, yes, sorry, the dollar
Okay,
value. correct.
all right. And so that means if we let out $100 million in contracts in a given year, I guess we'll do it over, what, a fiscal year? Is that
Yeah.
how we're
Well, we're going
basing
to
it?
start in July, so yes.
So, okay. So 250 million would be ideally small business.
That would be our goal, correct. And of course, with the materials, if we do end up having a lesser goal because we just don't have the 25%, then what will happen is our overall goal will come down. But I think then we can evaluate it, and we may say, okay, we can't hit 25, but we can hit 20, but we know that we're also doing it for materials, and that may be good enough for the board. You may look at that as a positive thing anyway. So we want to be able to provide you with the information so you can make an informed decision at that time.
I see. And can you refresh my memory, what qualifies a business as being a small business under this program?
Okay, well, the department is using the requirements that have been determined by the United States Small Business Administration. The way in which they do it is based on their NACE code, which is a commodity code that they have. Depending on the industry that you're in, the dollar amount changes. So for example, in certain industries, if you average $1 million a year for a couple of years, you may consider small. In other industries, it might be $10 million.
Got it.
Just based on the type of
So
industry.
you're just going to have to stay on top of your codes and figure out
Yes,
who.
that is
who's in
correct.
that.
Yes.
All right.
That's it.
Questions, comments?
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to compliment you. I think that we have made a good faith effort in this area to improve our practices. I think it's been clearly articulated. I think we're making really good progress, and you're really to be commended. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay, I do have 2 speaker cards on this one.
We have 2 speakers. I see Dr. Williams is waving at me, and I don't think he's saying hello, so why don't you come up?
Hello, Dr. Tom Williams, El Sereno, also LA 32 Neighborhood Council Chairman of Business and economic development. We don't have very much out there. Small businesses and how these businesses are going to be selected. Again, local. We were told LA City is local, but this one uses LA County. Can we get any information as to the difference as to number of enterprises involved in the programs, LA City, based on zip codes versus non-LA City? Because we're having real problems because people are going over to Alhambra because they're more business friendly. And that means fewer businesses in LA. So by allowing LA County to be local, you're basically going to spin off a lot of companies. We'd like to see more in the way of small business enterprises. $250 million? Wow, I wish. For small businesses in the city of Los Angeles, that would be a lot. So, local, county, city. Thank you.
Thank you. I think when this ordinance was first considered, some of us raised that same issue, and whether or not there was reciprocity in other cities in the county with the city of Los Angeles.
And what, refresh my memory to our general counsel, wasn't it required that it be
It's in the
countywide?
charter.
It's in the charter.
It's in the charter, okay, so.
That was, we had no.
Yeah, so we had no choice. If we'd been able to make it city, we might have done it, but we weren't allowed to.
It would, yeah, it would take a vote of the people.
Okay.
We have one more speaker, I believe.
Yeah, the next speaker is Linda Romney.
I basically have a question, and the question regards the rebids. What is the safeguards for the verbal communication for an existing bids once you open them up, and then you go back and you tell the other individual, oh, by the way, bud, we have a bid of X amount of dollars, so you need to lower your bid to this amount, which can very easily be done on a verbal basis. And that's why you have the same vendors year after year getting the contracts. Now, what's to prevent that from occurring? That's my question.
Maybe someone could answer that question offline with the, anything else on item 17?
Well, that was the last speaker card.
I think we're into closed session. Mr. Brown?
Yes, Mr. President. The board shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with Section 54-957.1 of the California Government Code.
Good. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene here for closed session.